welcome Shannon and Ben, and first of all, congratulations on an incredible film. This question is for both of you. Were you aware of the play? Had you seen it? And if so, how did that influence how you approached the film? Shannon?
Let me get rid of this quickly. I haven't. Shannon.
So I actually hadn't seen the play either, which is weird because I was a theatre director for 10 years and I used to see pretty much every show at Belvoir Street Theatre, which is where it originated. But I must have been away and I missed it, and I'd heard a lot about it. But this didn't come to me till about 7 years after the production. And the producers, Alex White and Jan Chapman, saw the play and went running to each other in the foyer, knowing that it would be their next film and that Rita would do the adaptation. So it took years to be developed, and it was a very challenging film to get funded. And then they came to me after another director was attached and then didn't do it. And then it came to me, 2.5 years ago, I guess now. So it was already, the script was already fully formed and I think in an incredible place.
You were working as a TV director at that point, and you'd also done quite a lot of theatre. Presumably you're looking for your first film project. What convinced you that this was the right script, the right screenplay?
Look, I think probably the same way maybe, Ben was inspired to do it. It was an incredible read, and the first read of it was really powerful. And I remember just sobbing on my couch afterwards, thinking I was so devastated to have finished my time with those 4 characters. And I wanted so much to spend more time with them. And I knew that the only way I could is if I got the job. So, I knew that I'd had to interview really well and try and make that my first feature, because I had said no to a lot of other scripts before then, just waiting for the right piece, and it just felt perfect for me.
Ben, I imagine you get sent a lot of scripts. Why this one? It does feel to me slightly different to some of the things that we tend to see you in. So what attracted you to this one?
It's very important to mention that I have the very good fortune to be represented by a woman called Leanne Higgins. She had seen the play, and she was also, kind of devastated and did a lot of laughing. And that's a great combo. She had been pushing this for a long, long time. And when she finally kicked my bum enough and I read it, I went, oh. And it was a no-brainer. I finished it, I rang her, I said, it's so beautiful. She replied, I have never heard you use that to describe anything ever. Look, the chance to go back and do I think of Babyteeth as having, my kind of soundbite for it has always been that it's kind of got all of the, the Australian virtues in there. It's got a big heart. It can have a laugh at itself. It's a mess. It's all right with itself being a mess. It struggles not to be a mess. As a family unit and as people, I'm talking here. And it was just very, very beautiful. Fortunately, Shannon said okay, and we were able to proceed. It was it's worth noting, and I haven't seen all of my films, but of all of the films that I have seen, Babyteeth is my favourite film of mine that I've been in. I think it's I just love it. I love it so, so much. I really love that. And I'm very proud of what I did, or what Shannon, got me to do, and that we captured, and that, what she kept and what she left.
I think Henry is, arguably he's the most grounded of the 4 characters. He's certainly the character who sees everything. But he does seem to be the one who's sort of in tune with what's going on around him. But does it feel like a departure for you to play a character who's actually more restrained in a way, more repressed than the others on the screen?
Look, I guess I can understand what you're talking about in that mode. And to the degree that the function that Henry sort of fills, particularly when we get to the end, that's really Shannon's work. That's really the way Shannon kind of, like those sort of much more sort of silent watching, feeling what's happening is Shannon's. I think Henry is I don't think of him as the most grounded. I think of him as the most manscaped, if you like. I think of him as being in some ways cohesive, but there's a way of looking at Babyteeth and the parenting in Babyteeth as pretty confused. And I think that one of the things I do love about Henry is, although you what you say about the restraint in him and all of that kind of stuff is quite true, he's also a guy who in a lot of ways has got it profoundly wrong. He's a man who's running around medicating his wife and cannot deal with the, and I don't think it's nice to play someone who's failing. Sorry, that's an unusual for me to get a moment like that. Who's failing with his full heart? Who's failing while having his full heart there? And in terms of the mode of, sort of bad guys or more kind of active characters, yeah, but there was I have a long history. Because I have a long history, I don't feel like it's a departure in a funny sort of a way. There's something about returning to Australian cinema, I think, which just feels like home. So I get it, but it didn't feel that way. And it's sort of, one always kind of, I think, when you go into it's horses for courses. And I think the course does look and feel different as a viewer, but no, it didn't feel different. I'm just still carrying on with the same BS that I've been doing since I was, 14. So it doesn't feel different.
Okay. Shannon, I mean, coming from television, can you talk a little bit about the switch from a kind of a long form of storytelling to having to convey characters' journey in the scope of a feature film? Did that feel like was there a lot of pressure for you to change the way you worked?
It's funny, I feel like this question is supposed to have an answer that says that it's really different, but the honest truth is, I think, so when you've got a block of television or one or two eps, I really always sort of approach it like it is my own feature film. And so if anything, making a film felt easier in some areas. So post-production was a complete blessing. It was so different because I had all this time. I could really mull over my decisions and just give it the attention that post-production really needs. And that was a game changer for me to experience that. But in terms of the prep and the shoot, it was as fast as television and as stressful. But I think it is amazing to have a singular vision and to have all that focus and attention for a greater amount of time. I really did love that. And I wasn't sure if I would, because I'm quite addicted to the stress and chaos of TV. But I did love making a film so much that I definitely want to do it again. And, we had a beautiful opportunity to have a very domestic story with a smaller cast, which was sort of a return to my theatre roots in many ways. And so I think because we knew we had such limited rehearsal time and shoot time, but all of us have worked in theatre. Eliza hadn't, but she has had now, actually. But we approached it like the theatre animals that we are. And I think that really helped.
You briefly mentioned the vision of the film. I mean, for something that has its roots in theatre, it really doesn't show, and I think that's quite unusual. So, can you talk a little bit about this sort of, it is like this vibrantly, assertively cinematic piece? Can you talk about developing the visual scheme, the vision of it, particularly, I guess, with the use of colour as well, and that?
Yeah, so Rita always felt, even when it was a play, that it was quite cinematic. So for her, and she began her work in theatre, she felt very strongly that she didn't want it to feel like a play. We've seen those versions of films where it doesn't quite translate. And so she was very conscious of that, and just worked incredibly hard to make sure that wasn't the case. Also, then what I did, which I've never done before, is I took 4 actors who weren't in the film into the house before everybody else arrived, and I pre-blocked it with Rita so that all of it we could make sure that it didn't feel too theatrical, and all the geography and every moment made sense beforehand, so we weren't wasting any time on the day with that. I think, the thing that's so special about the piece is the tone, and it was something that, when you read, you realized it was so unique, but capturing that was always going to be really complex. And the way that we sort of did it was, I'm not a stickler for sort of repeating things over and over again with actors. I make sure that they keep it fresh, and I make sure that they're constantly experimenting, so that then we have the opportunity in the edit to take something that might have been considered a dramatic moment and make it comedic, or vice versa. So I want them to always be alive. And some of my favorite moments are, those great mistakes that happen. Like there was a moment at the dinner scene where Ben dropped his spoon in his bowl and shocked himself and Essie burst out laughing. And it's like one of my favorite moments in the whole film. And of course it's in the scene because it was just so natural. Everyone stayed in character, but we're trying to handle what had happened. And you can only create that kind of environment if you truly have freedom on set and a trust in the whole team, really. In terms of the other thing that we would do, and it would be always nice to have more of an opportunity to do this, but there's a very special moment in the second last scene where Henry goes into Miller's room, and I said to Ben, I was going to hide a camera in the room, and he said, great, don't tell me where it is. And I wanted to play that out in real time with a camera in each space so that the actors could hear each other and respond to each other. And setting up things like that, of course, really add to the authenticity and the experience of the performers, feeling like they can be as in the moment as possible. In terms of color, I grew up in Hong Kong, which is a very neon and multicolored city, and I think my work has always been inspired by filmmakers from there, but also I just believe really strongly in the power of color and in cinema. And for Miller, for me, it was really important to show that and explore how she was seeing the world in color and how different that was from her parents' sort of more hazy, drug-induced, experience of dealing with her and their pre-grief. And music played a big role in that too. An editor that I work with very closely, Steve Evans, and I just spend a lot of time discussing music and working with music, and we pick it beforehand so that the actors can really be feeling that in the moment on set, because that makes a huge difference. Just plonking it on later in post doesn't give the camera team the same feeling too as they're shooting it. So trying to make all that work.
I'll talk to you a little bit more about the music choices in a moment, but can I just pick up on what you were saying about what you want from performances? In fact, I was going to quote something that you said in another interview. I'm always pushing them to give a variety of performances. This question's for Ben, by the way. I like to be able to play with what could be a less obvious choice for a response. So can you talk a little bit about your experience with that, and how, was it a freeing experience to be sort of allowed to do the unusual things for a take?
I think that's what the point of a take is. you know, what the way Shannon was working, and one of the great strengths of the way Shannon was working is she knows exactly what she's doing, right? Within how she's going to approach it. So we don't really even think about it. We just try this, we try that. I really get uncomfortable with the notion that the sort of the tyranny of continuity stuff, this and that and the other. I vastly prefer to treat a take as a proposition. That's all it is. It's just a proposal of how this might be. So it felt very, it's a sort of it's been the way I've sort of been going towards work for a good while. So I felt very comfortable and natural. It's just the way it's the better way to work, especially if you're doing film and you don't necessarily aren't stitched into the particular requirements of picking up a cup on this line, etc., etc. And as long as you can get those basics in, then that's all the point of a take is. I mean, they should always be more or less thus. I understand Hitchcockian and certain, Fincher-esque kind of exactness. That's fine. Outside of that, STFU, let's kick the footy, let's see what happens, and that's my preferred method.
I'm going to ask one more question to Shannon, and then we have a lot of questions coming in from viewers, so I'll get to those. But the one thing that occurred to me is, the dying teen genre is one of those things that you sort of see in Sundance, and it is so often really, really, really bad. So how did you approach this sort of the dying teen film without it becoming a kind of quirky Sundance cliche? How did you avoid that? Because you really did avoid that very well.
Yeah, I think because it was never a film about dying in many ways to me. It was a film about, how do you deal with, particularly for the parents, your boundaries having to shift because all you're trying to do is obviously make sure that your daughter's happy and you're not quite dealing with the realities of what's to come. But really it's all Miller's perspective and how she's wanting to live her life. And she's not focused on the death, and she's not wanting to have everybody view her in that way. And so that's why she obviously seeks out Moses, someone who doesn't look at her that way, and she doesn't look at him in the way that the rest of the world does either. And so that's how they come together, obviously. But I think it was always about sticking with where she was at, and that the focus therefore wasn't poor me or melodramatic, or also it's not my taste at all. To be honest, someone had said to me, your first film is going to be a teen love story about a girl dying of cancer, I would have said, no, it's not. But that's what I loved about it when I read it. I just thought, Rita's comedy and very unique perspective on people is so honest, and I just loved how funny it was, and because I felt that made it so much more real, and there was such an Australian sense of humour in that was captured authentically, and we weren't sort of pushing ourselves as this sort of Australiana cliche, which happens a lot in our cinema. And it felt much more modern and realistic. And yeah, I don't know. I just think it's one of those films that's almost impossible to describe, but when you watch it, it isn't that genre that we all have, know so well. I don't know what genre it is, to be honest, though.
Well, it's its own thing. I think it defies categorization. I'm going to start reading some of the questions from viewers, from BAFTA members. The first one's for Ben. Ben, I noticed that the role of Moses seems a lot like a role that you would have played at one time in your career. Did you find yourself in a mentorship kind of position with Toby Wallace? This is from Reed Jones. That's the question.
I wish, Reed, that I could have, Mary Jones, that I could have been a mentor to him. I don't think I'd have dodged the amount of pitfalls that Toby managed to dodge. I think I would have messed up Mo. I would have overcolored him a bit, I think. And I think one of Toby's towering achievements was that he managed to play a young, rejected junkie without ever falling into any of the pitfalls of it. Yeah, so he was blessedly free of my mentorship.
So we're going to pick up again on the soundtrack. Neil Thompson wants to know what made you select particular songs for the soundtrack, Shannon.
Oh, it was a range of things, you know. Some of those songs I've been wanting to use for years in other work, and they just happened to then fit perfectly in this. A lot of them also came from the sense of the classical world of the parents mixed with Gideon's world, music world. I make playlists for all the production team beforehand, which we play during pre-production, and the actors get them too. And so there's always a discussion about what people would be listening to. And, you know, Eliza would make these amazing Instagram videos for me of her dancing to different pieces of music. And that's how we sort of discovered how Miller would move. And, you know, then one day I was listening to this children's radio station called Kindling Kids Radio, and there was this children's choir actually from London, and this school choir singing a sea shanty song called Santiana that had been put together as a folk song. And I went, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. And I watched the video of it, and it was so moving, but I thought, where could we put that? And then we re-recorded it in Australia, and like, I don't know, it's things just you know, come together from a lot of discussion and collaboration. But it's a huge focus for us always, and I like to use music in a different way that's not you know, often it's diegetic, which is, I think, great, because then it can swarm and become score without it seeming too obvious that it's score. And then Amanda Brown, our amazing composer, did the piano pieces and the beautiful piece at the end.
Another question for Ben. There were so many beautiful and heartbreaking moments in the film, but the final scene between Ben and Eliza on the beach was so beautifully nuanced and affecting. Ben, you have been doing this job for a long time and are obviously very good at it. But do you still feel pressure when doing scenes like this that can carry so much emotional weight, or do you just approach it the same way as, you know, any other part of the job?
No. You definitely are aware, like when you know you've got scenes coming up. No, there's definitely there absolutely is. But hopefully, hopefully all of that stuff is taking you to the point where you can, you know, you can land it sort of correctly. I'm very proud of that moment, but the one I'm more proud of is the one afterwards, when everyone's together and we're in flashback, and then you just see that shot of him, and that one's not planned. That's just us doing it on the day. That moment there to me is that's the one that I go, well done. That's the one I look at and I go, that's good. Do more acting like that. So yes, you do feel it. Of course, yeah, no, very much. And the nerves, the anxiety, all that stuff about it, it never goes away. It's the same as, you know, yes, it always remains, you know, it's got to get out there and do it. It's like, woo.
Shannon, there's a very specific question here. I'm assuming this is from an Australian. Did you have any problems with the cicadas while filming? Because they can be oppressively loud in that area, and I didn't hear them at all. Did you have to do a lot of ADR? And if you did, good job, it was seamless.
No, so there were cicadas in every single sound guide track in the entire film, and it's a really intense time of year because of the heat. They go bananas. Plus, for some reason, everyone decides to mow their fucking lawns during summer in Australia, and so non-stop there was just incessant cicadas and lawnmowers, and I just decided to embrace it. And the sound team, who are amazing in Australia at Spectrum, they were like, Shannon, obviously you're going to ADR like the whole film. And I was like, no, that's not happening. I said, we're going to clean this up. I don't care what it takes. And they did. And it was so much work. But I also said, I want the sounds design to be really raw and much more documentary style. And that's what it is. And I think in many ways that contributes a huge part to why it feels so visceral and honest, because we haven't ADR'd almost anything. And because I really believe strongly in working like that in TV, in everything. I have big pushback with sound because I know that they can achieve it, and they do, but it's not to ADR that. Why are we there if we have to redo those performances? I don't mind the crackles, tiny crackles of mics and things. All that is people don't even notice, you know. It's And I was really inspired by, you know, if you rewatch Breaking the Waves, that soundtrack, like that is so noisy, and all the elements, the wind and I just think it's all there, and it really makes that film in so many ways. And I just, I wanted it. The cicadas are actually in there, and you can hear them a lot of the time, and the crazy birds but we had to tone them down a bit, of course.
This actually ties in with another question that's just come through about the ecological sort of theme. So the film has a lovely ecological, environmental sort of theme throughout. Were the interspersed scenes with the birds intentional in that? The birds at the feeder, were the birds eating garbage? Were those metaphors to the experience of the characters?
Yeah, look, you know, I really loved that Rita had written the comments that Miller makes about the birds and her reflecting on them. And I just wanted to take it further and also to add more of a comedic tone to that, so it didn't just become, you know, too poetic. And so Moses has them on his shirt that gets all the blood on it, the dirty ibises and the birds at Gideon's place. We just started going bird crazy, really, because also in Australia we have such unique looking birds, and their sounds are so different, and they don't sound like the beautiful birds you have here in England. They sound like someone's being murdered a lot of the time, and so we wanted to embrace that, and also to keep it as the theme of Miller. And I mean, it sounds so corny, but I swear, after doing so much bird work on that film, when I see birds, I think about the spirit of Miller, and it does make me smile. And I did try to make that something that could be a beautiful metaphor without it being cliched.
I've got a question for Ben. In the film, you play a father who's also a doctor, and I read that your father is a doctor too. Were you somehow influenced by your dad in playing Henry, or by someone else in your life?
No, you know what? There is a kind of a vibe of Henry, which is a little bit informed by my dad. And there was also another friend of his who was a psychiatrist. And so it's a little bit of the vibe of those guys. So that's in the mix there. Yeah.
Another question here about the use of on-screen text from Ian. Can you talk a little bit about the use of screen text, and what stage of the process was this decided on? Was it early in the script development or during the edit?
Yeah.
Those fucking awesome.
When I read so I didn't read the play until just about 2 weeks maybe before we started shooting. And when I read it, I suddenly went, there was two things. So she had titles in it, but in classic Rita style, some of the titles went for 4 sentences. And then sometimes there were just also these hints of, she'd write these moments which were what the dead said to Miller, and the dead would talk to Miller throughout the production. And I thought, that's beautiful. So I sort of merged the two, and I started with the idea that initially the titles were very practical. This is where we are, this is who these people are. And then they started to build into more of Miller's inner thoughts in inner world, and then they became much more poetic and epic as she becomes more spiritually connected to what's happening. And so I had always had them in mind. They shifted several times in the edit as to what they were saying, but where they were stayed pretty similar. And Rita and I kept working on them throughout post. But for me, they were really important to also divide up the time. I didn't want people to be worried about what week is it, what stage is she at. I wanted all of that to not be an issue. I also really believe in the power of using Brechtian techniques really accurately, and therefore having the emotional payoff be so much stronger at the end. So there were many reasons I fought to keep those in, because they were slightly controversial in the making of it. But I had the producers' support the whole time. But it was something that would sometimes divide audiences. But for me, it was really important.
I just want to add to that. I love the titling so much. It makes the film, it does something to the film, which for me is so unexpected. One of my two great, worship things I get about Shannon is the titling and that incredible scene where Miller first appears in love out into the world at night, which to me are my sort of like the things that I get incredibly like about, I just think the titling, I love the titles, and the titles weren't there, they weren't with us. They were all there at the end, and she had a lot of getting, no, don't do no, don't do that, no. She copped a lot of it. So anyway, that's it. That's all I want to say.
Thanks.
A little bit of insight there into the production process.
Also, I forgot, back on the bird metaphor, the other thing that we focused on a lot was that house, and we picked a house that
genius,
a mid-century design house, but also something that felt like a glass atrium, and this idea that even though it was quite beautiful and there was still a very loving home in so many ways, but there was something still suffocating even in all that beauty. And that she just could not escape, and she felt like a bird trapped in that glass atrium.
Love that house. Genius.
Probably got time for a couple more questions. So I'm going to ask about the chemistry of the family is brilliant, says Rodrigo. Did Ben, Eliza, and Essie spend time together before the shooting began? So yeah, how did you achieve that kind of very natural chemistry that does feel incredibly authentic?
Ben, look, you got everyone. Yeah, you go, because that was
no. You go. You boss. You kick it off. I've got some.
Well,
I've got 2 cents worth.
We had such little time, and of course, we did rehearsals and everything. But Ben was also really good at getting everyone to meet up outside rehearsals, which for me is always so much more important. Yes, I can do work with them in the room, but they need their own time away from me, and to get together and to run lines and to spend a bit of time together. And Ben was really strong at making sure everybody would do that, because he knew how important it was.
It's pretty simple, really. I mean, when you've got relationships that have anything, or even if it's just helpful to spend time together. I mean, it happens quite naturally, of course, if you're in a company doing a show or whatnot, but it's a really valuable thing. It just pays off. I mean, there's so much friction and crap and, you're doing it this way, all of that stuff, that the more of a rapport, it's just time. And time is not always, and time about nothing, just time. But we had Essie. And when you've got Essie, when you've got such... Essie is just like the greatest power lifter actor that we have in our country. She is incredible, of incredible emotional, just bam. I mean, she's a serious, So Essie's kind of, when you've got Essie there, everyone else can chill out. Mum can lift it all. If it comes to it, don't worry, we got her. So there is a chance when you've got someone that is so strong and so capable and such a powerful actor, you can kind of chill, because if we got to really get in there and go to the 14th round and bam, 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 it's all right. We got Essie. Do you know what I mean? And you got Essie. You don't have to worry about anything else. Essie, Essie could have done it all.
But you two share the same sense of humor as well. And so what's great is that, and it was so perfect because even in those, you know, really dramatic moments, there's just this incredible alignment of their connection and sense of humor, which I just think it was so essential for that. And like one of my favorite moments is the morning before they discover Miller, and Essie's cake, and she can't stop laughing. And you know, that cake actually was quite disgusting in real life, and I know that that's also what they were laughing about, but it just all worked out so well. And yeah, I mean, you two are just, there's incredible chemistry, and it works so well. And I think, yeah,
we'd wanted to work together for a long time. We had known each other from, you know, we'd see each other and this and that and the other. Never worked together. I'd been a very big and ardent fan, and that's the other favorite bit of the movie, because I made the movie. But when that scene happens, and then boom, I'd forgotten where we were because of, anyway. That's that. Another question. That's that question answered.
That's brilliantly answered. There's a question here about the female gaze of the film. So the questioner says, Ben looks particularly sexy in the movie. Well, he always does, but this was next level. Was this intentional as part of the strong female gaze of the film?
All right. Oh, thank you very much. That's very nice of you. But...
look, I mean, I think it's hard to say. I mean, the female gaze is interesting, isn't it? Because all I know in many ways is my gaze, and yes, it is female, but I go, there's very much a sense of, exploring all the bodies, but, you know, the male bodies through a different view of, I guess, them being attractive and seductive and all those other things is definitely something we're often playing with, particularly, of course, with Miller's view of Moses and how she's drinking him in at every moment, and how that's changing her and transforming her. I mean, I guess I'm always, you know, thinking about how the different characters are viewing one another. But I mean, I have no doubt that the men come across as sexy in the film, and that is my view of sort of how these women are perceiving them. Like, I don't sort of concentrate on it, but I do get those comments a lot, and I think it's physical. You know what it is? It's physicality. I really believe so strongly in the body as a visual language, and so much of Ben's very physical in his comedy, and all the characters speak so much in just what they do with their bodies. And I think that's actually what people are recognizing. And it comes from, I think, theatre as well. I remember Frantic Assembly often talking about how they wanted their plays to always be so physical that if you took all the words away, that you could still understand everything that was happening. And I love that idea, and I think about it often, that you should be able to still understand what's happening if you don't hear the words through how people communicate with their bodies.
And in film too, I think that's how you can tell if a film's any good. Turn the sound down. If you can still feel it and follow it, you're solid.
Yeah.
I think we've probably got time for one more question. We've kind of gone a little bit over, but there's a question from someone who actually went to high school with you, Ben, but I haven't got their name, so I don't know who it is. Congratulations.
There are 2 high
awesome
school,
film.
3 possibly.
Anyway, the question is, the person wants you to clarify why this was your favourite of all the films of yours that you've watched. What is it that you really connect with?
It's because it's going back to the last point, and it's because of the gaze of it. I think of it, the way I describe it, it's a very muscularly feminine film to me. That's my interpretation of it. And it's not a story about dying. It's a story about a young woman who meets someone, falls crazy in love with them, starts to go out into the world against these sort of parents who are sort of doing all this shit. and it's really the emotion of her life and love that beats me around, as well as it is the intensity of the feeling I think Essie and I do well at providing the stakes for the arch so that Romeo and Juliet can be Romeo and Juliet. And I just love the way it unfolds. I love what Shannon and Andrew do together. I've spoken about a few of them because it's an Australian film, because I don't know that I cringe or regret many moments, or if any moments. And most time I watch stuff back, that's what it's about. It's still that bit of the brain that just wants to think about how you could, because that's basically, it's problem solving, right? If I'm not watching it and I'm going, oh, there's no problem here, then and I can feel it, that's it. But that's why it is my favorite of all the films, because it's the most itself in a way. It's the most itself, and it's just the most itself, and the most sort of beautiful and confident. And I think it's a cool movie, and I just fucking love it. I just really love that movie, and I'm intensely proud of it.
Well, that's a really lovely sentiment to end on. Can I just say thank you, both of you, so much, Shannon Murphy and Ben Mendelsohn.
Thank you for having us, guys.
Thanks.